Hello there, my name is Pankaj Mishra. You're watching News9 Live, and today I am with you with all the latest national and international developments. What a day with Kim Jong-un heading to Vladivostok to possibly meet Vladimir Putin. Then Saudi Arabia's Mohammed Bin Salman here in India signing 8 crucial deals. So obviously Maldives into the second round of elections and whatnot. Let's begin with India and Saudi Arabia ties. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed Bin Salman Al Saud held a bilateral meeting in New Delhi. Both reaffirmed the deep-rooted strategic partnership between India and Saudi Arabia. This meeting marks the second state visit of the Saudi Crown Prince to India since February 2019. Before meeting Prime Minister Modi, Mohammed Bin Salman received a ceremonial reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan and inspected a combined defense services guard of honor. In a concise statement, he congratulated India for its successful stewardship of G20 presidency. And 8 deals were signed between the two nations. And one of the key outcomes of this diplomatic meeting was the signing of the minutes of the inaugural meeting of the India-Saudi Strategic Partnership Council, which was held at the iconic Hyderabad House.
हम हमारे संबंधों में नए और आधुनिक आयाम जोड़ रहे हैं। भारत के लिए सऊदी अरब हमारे सबसे महत्वपूर्ण स्ट्रैटेजिक पार्टनर में से एक है। विश्व की 2 बड़ी और तेज गति से बढ़ने वाली अर्थव्यवस्थाओं के रूप में हमारा आपसी सहयोग पूरे क्षेत्र की शांति और स्थिरता के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। हिज रॉयल हाइनेस के साथ बैठक के हमने हमारी करीबी साझेदारी को नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जाने के लिए कई इनिशिएटिव की पहचान की है। आज की हमारी बैठक से हमारे संबंधों को एक नई ऊर्जा, एक नई दिशा मिलेगी और हमें मिलकर मानवता की भलाई के लिए काम करते रहने की प्रेरणा मिलेगी। कल हमने मिलकर भारत, पश्चिम एशिया और यूरोप के बीच इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर स्थापित करने के लिए ऐतिहासिक शुरुआत की है। इसी कॉरिडोर से केवल दोनों देशों ही आपस में नहीं जोड़ेगा, परंतु एशिया, पश्चिम एशिया और यूरोप के बीच आर्थिक सहयोग, ऊर्जा के विकास और डिजिटल कनेक्टिविटी को बल देगा। योर रॉयल हाइनेस, आपके नेतृत्व में और आपके विजन 2030 के माध्यम से सऊदी अरब जिस तेजी से आर्थिक और सामाजिक प्रगति कर रहा है, उसके लिए मैं हृदय से आपका बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं। सऊदी अरब में रहने वाली भारतीयों के हितों की सुरक्षा और उनके कल्याण के लिए आपकी प्रतिबद्धता के लिए हम आपके बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं। भारत और सऊदी अरब की मित्रता क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक स्थिरता, समृद्धि और मानव कल्याण के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। मैं एक बार फिर हिज रॉयल हाइनेस और आप सभी का G20 समिट की सफलता में योगदान देने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं।
Beneficial relations for both countries. There was no disagreement at all during the history of this relationship, but there is cooperation to build the future of our country and create opportunities. Today we're working on the future opportunities. There is a huge agenda to be working with. We are working through this council to achieve these accomplishments, and these are promising, and I congratulate you on the management of the G20 summit and the initiatives achieved, including the economic corridor linking the Middle East, India and Europe, which require that we work diligently in order to create it into a reality. The Indians in Saudi Arabia had a large part in the economic growth of Saudi Arabia. Today they are 7% of the population of Saudi Arabia. We hope that this council will meet the aspirations of our people, and we wish us success.
All right, so there we heard it from both the heads of the states. Now, Ambassador S.D. Muni, former Indian diplomat, and Ramakrishnan Sridharan, consulting editor, News9, joins us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking time out. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Muni, first. India-Saudi Arabia Strategic Partnership Council, obviously one of the many cooperative forums that both the countries share and exchange. Your views on this new partnership that they have struck?
Well, yes, I think for the last few years, India has been trying to improve its relations with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, as you know, is a very important country for India from various point of view. One is, of course, the energy dependence, and then the role in Middle East of Saudi Arabia is very significant. And whenever it comes to Pakistan and other issues related to Pakistan, Saudi Arabia emerges as a big factor. So it has been an important country, but both in, therefore, the change in India also has been in response to what Saudi Arabia is trying to change itself, because their economy has mostly been dependent upon oil. And for last, I think, 7-10 years, they have been trying to restructure their economy and put in money for investments, for trade, for manufacturing and doing things which they did not do earlier. And this is where they found that India is not only a major market, but India can be a good partner. So I think both from India and Saudi Arabia, there has been a felt need to come closer to each other, and strategic partnership is a part of that.
Indeed. Shri, you know, you are in Washington, and obviously we have seen in the past India's Look West policy has gained a lot of prominence in the recent years. In your opinion, how does Saudi Arabia fit into this broader strategic vision?
So, Ambassador Munir touched upon some of the key factors, but let me just quickly recap. You know, one is, of course, the changing constellations geopolitically, which has now led to a newer alignment between Saudi Arabia and India. Now, if you look at Saudi Arabia, you know, as Ambassador Munir also pointed out, it is entirely dependent on its fossil fuel resources. Now, as part of Vision 2030, you know, the Crown Prince, the Prime Minister, NBS, Mohammed Bin Salman, does, you know, he really wants to transform the country into a more wide-based country. And that's on the economic front, Pankaj. But more significantly, what has happened is that, you know, with US defocusing a little bit, you know, in the Middle Eastern area, over the last, you know, 2-3 years, China has had an opportunity to step in. And the reason why Saudi allowed China to broker the Iran deal was largely because of its growing tensions with the US. So now, you know, but, you know, don't forget that India is a large country. It's a growing country, a democratic country. It has everything that Saudi would need to keep its investments safe and, you know, grow. But that said, it's also investing in China. It is also growing closer to China. It has invested in refinery. It's building another new refinery in China. So those are things which Saudi is doing in relation to China as well. But I think there are limits to the distance Saudi will want to walk, or how much it wants to get sucked into China's orbit of influence, for a very simple reason. You know, Saudi is the defender of the Islamic faith, it's the keeper of the Islamic faith. As the home to Mecca, it is the holiest site for all Muslims around the world. You know, it's the keeper of the faith. And look at what China is doing in Xinjiang. It is, you know, it's basically putting Muslims through some sort of a school where they're being made to unlearn Islam. And very, very unfortunately, Pankaj, this should not happen to anyone. Some of them are even being forced to eat pork, which is, you know, banned. It's haram, Islam. But it is a national meat of China. So I think despite the trade logic which Saudi shares with China, I think at a deeper level, there will be limits which Saudi draws to how close it wants to get to China because of the divergent views on many issues, including religion. Whereas India is a country with a large Muslim population, and we are a democracy ultimately, you know, and our people decide who is going to govern. And the fact that we have a large market and we need a lot of energy fossil fuel, which is why if you look at the G20 declaration also, we have not really put any curbs on on growth of fossil fuel. So these are things which work to Saudi Arabia's advantage. That said, Pankaj, I think India should also not take Saudi for granted, because if you look at the protests that are happening in Ratnagiri over the proposed refinery, I think this is not something Saudi Arabia would want to be patient with. I think India needs to address these issues. Absolutely. So that this ecology versus economy debate, sometimes which tends to be a little fake, it managed much better, so that critical investment, for example, something that secures our energy needs, is like put in place, and India is able to grow and provide cheap energy to its billions of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sri. Talking about India and Saudi Arabia, obviously, it is clear from what you have mentioned that it's not just independently Saudi Arabia and India, but there are other players as well. China, for one, definitely, and United States, and then there are other aspects also. Ambassador Muni, major challenges, there have been issues of late which both the countries, India and Saudi Arabia, have overcome. Keeping the rest of the players, say China for that matter, say some American interests also in mind, what are the key factors or the key areas where India and Saudi Arabia can still build upon beyond the obvious trade partnerships?
No, it's not only trade. I said they want to restructure their economy. Saudi Arabia and most of the West Asian countries have heavily depended upon India for the labor, migrant labor. And they have been, one of the important factors which have kept the relationship between the two countries going on. Now, the whole question of economic restructuring is trade reflects the restructuring. Trade has grown between the two countries without a major restructuring, because I think Saudi Arabia, India is, I think, fourth largest trading partner of Saudi Arabia, and India is seventh largest. So the trade has grown because economies have grown. But look at it, India's economy is growing. Of course, Chinese economy is growing, but India is growing the fastest, number one. Number two, India's population is growing. Now you have 1.4 billion people growing at the rate of 6.5 to 7%. You don't find anywhere else in the world. And if you don't find anywhere else in the world, then this is the kind of a market for multi-dimensional economic engagement. And you cannot neglect it in one way or the other. Secondly, they also want to have a balance. As my co-panelist just now mentioned about the China factor. Now, if they would want to put their eggs in any single basket, from US they have withdrawn a lot of their eggs, because they have realized that mostly relationship with the US was based on purchase of arms and the sense of fake security which they have been nursing all these years. If you want to expand in other areas, then you have to engage with people. This is amazing that they have decided to have a relationship with Iran. The two traditional rivals in the region now have decided to come back. So the geopolitics and geoeconomics of the region is radically transforming itself. And there they find that India is a factor which cannot be neglected. Not only that, cannot be neglected, it has got to be nursed. Now, I want to mention one additional factor. India has also been needing to go to Central Asia, to West Asia. It had tried to go through Iran. Pakistan is not doing anything. Chabahar and others, we have done it, but somehow it has not succeeded. Partly for the last 20 years, Afghan war and all. So they are looking for alternate ways to go to West Asia and interact with West Asia. And Saudi Arabia is a major, not only Saudi Arabia, UAE also. India has tremendously improved its relations with UAE. So there is a look west policy, as it was mentioned, has multiple dimensions. And trade is one indicator of how the relationship is growing. But it can be even security. I don't rule that out.
No, definitely. Arms purchases also very much a part of the exchanges that the two countries have. Shri, obviously, going beyond the trade and the oil part also, much like United States, I would say 2.2 million expats, Indian expats living in Saudi Arabia, quite a sizable number there. When it comes to obviously closer ties, do you believe that this particular aspect also is kept in mind as far as the expats are concerned, and how does it impact the global decisions?
No. The very fact that you have 2.2 million Indians living in Saudi, I mean, it's a big thing for any country, and we do want our say there. But I just want to add something on the previous question, which is why does Saudi feel comfortable doing this with India, walking the extra mile to be India's partner? It's largely because I think there's a deep at the underlying level, there's a deep appreciation of India's foreign policy and the way we conduct ourselves, which is we are not, committing ourselves to any bloc. We believe in maintaining friendly relations with all countries. If you look at just the, the West, Middle East, we are friends with Israel, we are friends with Iran, we are friends with Saudi Arabia. So all these, traditional enemies who generally don't get along with each other, India is friends with all of them. And from a Saudi point of view also, an alignment or some sort of a friendship or deeper relationship with India is preferable versus China, because then US also doesn't really get, upset about. Because, as you know, US doesn't want China to grow its influence, and it's trying to curb China's influence globally. So I think this is a very safe bet, which Saudi sees will be based on the merits of foreign diplomacy, on the merits of, economy, and the rationale of, tapping each other's strengths, the synergies that exist between Saudi Arabia and India. We need a lot of oil, and Saudi Arabia needs a whole lot of everything else, which India has, whether it's services, technology, manufacturing, you name it, we have it, right? So I think this is the formation of a very, very strong, a relationship, which Pankaj, I think, is going to, really, really grow as we go into the coming decades.
Absolutely, absolutely, Shri. Ambassador Muni, now very recently, only day before yesterday, the G20 summit, obviously, the European Union, Middle East, India economic corridor came into being, talks about transnational railways and ports also. Many would say, obviously, that it's an effort to counter Chinese BRI. But nonetheless, so what significant development, your views on this new corridor that has come up?
No, as I said earlier, that India is badly looking for a transit route to West Asia, and it has not succeeded. Now, this is one corridor which has been thought as an alternate. China's BRI, competing with China's BRI, is absolutely fine. That will happen. To what extent it will be able to divert the traffic which is otherwise going on Chinese BRI network remains to be seen. And at the moment, I think it is an idea which is being put on the table. Probably on the drafts are being prepared for how this will happen. But still, it is only an MOU. It is still the nuts and bolts have not been fixed into it. And most of the nuts and bolts would depend upon how much money who is putting in and what sector one is taking responsibility of in terms of completing and all that. These are more details which they say in coming month or two, they will finalize all these details. Then only we will know how fast this corridor would be able to come, how much Europe would be able to put in, how much Saudi Arabia would be able to put in, how much US support will come in, and of course, how much India is going to contribute and what it is going to do. So the details have to be worked out. Now, there is another question which is being debated, that many times a lot of the Chinese road network is not yielding the economic advantages which was envisaged.
Right.
So here again, we have to see this corridor when it comes, how much trade, how much movement it really would generate, how much of energy, how much of goods and services would be able to travel through it, I think that assessment has also still being, rough estimates have been made. In fact, Dowell was sent to the US and Saudi Arabia to, give final touches to this kind of an agreement which has come about. But as I said, it is still a skeleton agreement, but it's an excellent idea in terms of giving advantage also to India as also to Saudi Arabia. And let us see how really it unfolds.
All right. Indeed. Shri, your views on this all-important EU-Middle East-India corridor?
So I definitely see it as a counter to the, China's Belt and Road Initiative, Pankaj, very clearly. Because apart from allowing China to build infrastructure often, to the detriment of its, let's say not enemies, but maybe countries it's not friendly with. It has also created, a debt trap diplomacy where a lot of these countries are losing critical assets because China is funding them and then they are not able to pay. So I think this will be an alternative, and more importantly, I think the corridor in which the investment happens, you will see a tremendous prosperity coming up, because we are talking about billions of dollars that's going to be invested along this corridor. So when it happens, it will create a lot of employment, a lot of industry will spring up. We're talking about diverse kind of industries, from energy to green energy to telecommunications, right? So we will have a lot of investment coming. And the countries that are participating in this will see the benefits of this. There will be an accelerated impact on the GDP of these countries, without doubt, Pankaj, when it happens.
Absolutely, Shri. Thank you so much. Ambassador Muni, thank you so much for taking time out. We have unfortunately come to the end of this particular segment, but thanks indeed for taking time out and speaking to us. Much appreciated. Well, that was Ambassador Muni and Shri speaking to us on the issue of how Chinese influence also is one of the factors as far as the India-Saudi Arabia developing ties are concerned. We'll take a short commercial break here. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it.